G'day mates, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to cover everything that's been going on in the solo FNCS qualifiers over the last few days, which big names qualified and which ones didn't, and more importantly, why the certain ones didn't. We had Ronaldo not qual, we had Leshy not qual, but probably weirdest of all, we had Mongraal not qualifying for one of the strangest reasons I've ever seen. I'll talk about that in a little bit. I also want to take a look at those who did qualify and where they've been dropping, because we do have the finals tomorrow and we have some Dropspot maps to go over, but I've been watching over 20 hours of solos Fortnite in the last few days now, and I figured out which drops are working really well and which ones just aren't, which could help you guys out for arena or tournaments for yourself. I also want to finish up today's video talking about the Thanos Cup. We have a brand new cup announced and it looks really cool. The format's interesting. It is going to be duos and it's for a pretty damn thick skin, which I think is going to be pretty cool, but I want to give you guys some tips and some pointers on how to play that cup to make sure you win it. So let's just jump into the video. Before I go through these big pros who didn't qualify, I want to make it clear that I'm not flaming them. I'm not calling them out. I'm actually so surprised how many ridiculously good solo players there are still out there who haven't even played proper solos in months. So there is more than enough reason for why these guys didn't qualify, but Mongraal has one of the weirdest reasons out of all of them. He slept in. And it's kind of weird because he had round 2. Remember, the format was round 1, day 1. He did really well in that. Round 2, day 2, did really well in that. But then round 3 was an hour after round 2. But I guess Mongraal just thought that round 3 was the next day, which is actually round 4. So my man went back to sleep and had to have Mama Benji Fishy's mum, call Mongraal's mum to make sure that he knew that the tournament was on. We ended up getting the tweet, "What is today? Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark." And that was after the tournament had started. He then got on. Mongraal actually started playing really well, had some huge early games, but unfortunately right at the very end just fell short. He ended up going into his last game and things were looking pretty good. Only needed about 10 more points, made it to end game, and unfortunately got into one fight, and that's all it would have taken. One fight and his tack. He just missed one shot. If he'd gotten that elimination, potentially would have had the mats, would have had the loot to go on and then clutch up the qualification. The format was a little bit weird. There's a lot of players who missed out who did phenomenally well. The one that comes to mind first off for me is actually Bizik on NA East. I was actually watching him. Much love to the ex-console gang as well. Bizik was playing phenomenally. I was doing a viewing party and I thought my mans would be on so many higher points, like just so much higher on the leaderboard, because he was getting like consistent 10s to 15s, but that wasn't enough. And I know what you're thinking, like, oh, he came 15th. In this format, if you had one extra flopper, maybe a chug cannon, like 5 extra builds, that was quite often enough to take you from like 15th to 3rd. I'm not kidding. These games were so ridiculously stacked. NA East having active surge on almost every single lobby that I watched. If you had just that little bit extra, you survived and made so many more points. Some people really liked the format. Some people didn't like it so much. The only downside I could see is the fact that with that victory out in second place being worth so much, you had to really get a win or two in the tournament to get enough points to qualify. Getting consistent top 10s wasn't enough. When you think about it in solos, active Storm Surge solos, getting consistent top 10s is ridiculously hard. Quite often it's a bit more luck and, you know, sometimes a bit more skill, setting yourself up for that victory out. But that's what I want to make very clear here. A lot of these guys who didn't qualify actually came up really close, and all it would take is that one extra victory out or maybe surviving a little bit longer in a couple more games. Mongraal's was rough. He started 40 minutes late and still almost qualified. So as far as the future of Fortnite goes, remember, this is just a once-off solo FNCS. It's not coming back. It's not happening again. As far as we're aware, we are back into a trio FNCS this season, and players like Mongraal are looking absolutely fantastic, which makes me happy. That's what I'm mainly looking at this for. Yes, it's going to be really sad to see Mongraal again not in an FNCS finals, but as far as the future goes, things look really good. As far as Metro goes, Metro absolutely dominated, really did put the people in the backseat who were saying that he's washed, that he's not playing well, he's not motivated, he's not there anymore. He came top 30 and he did it in really dominant fashion. He had an 11 elimination second. I think it was his 3rd last game, which got him so many points and proved that he's really still got us. I was happy about that. Unfortunately, we did have some other big names fall short. We did have Fleshi not qualify. We had CRR not qualify. We had Wolfies managed to slide in there as well, though, so some big names there. I'll talk about who did make it in a little bit. The other big name that didn't make it was Ronaldo. Unfortunately, Ron didn't play the best. He went on Twitter to admit it as well. He didn't try to make excuses, didn't try to complain. Ron did say, don't really care, oh well, didn't deserve to qual. And now, I find this one interesting because Ron ended up having Miro coach him, and they were actually looking pretty good. I would say, out of all the solos tournaments I've watched Ron play in quite a while, this is when Ron looked his best mentally. He wasn't freaking out as much, he wasn't raging as much. I think obviously it not being opens in those final rounds, he wasn't getting stream sniped as much. I think Ron actually played quite well, and I think he showed a lot of potential to do better in the future, but I guess if Ron just kind of doesn't really want to play competitive Fortnite anymore, I can't blame him. He's moving on to bigger things, he's making other content, and honestly having so much success with it. He did just make his big post for getting 1 million followers on Twitter, which if you guys didn't see it, I'll link in the description down below. I would highly recommend giving it a read. It is one of the nicest things I've ever read to come out of Fortnite. So sad to see Ron not make it. I mean, he hasn't been playing the game that much, so it's not super surprising. I really want to see him take it seriously again, but at the same time, I fully understand where he's coming from. Rather than just running through the leaderboards to show you who did make it, let's take a look at the maps. Now, unfortunately, we only have NA East map to go off because Guild Ginger, who normally makes all the EU maps, shout out to you, bro, I absolutely love you. We only have the one for the actual grand finals with the 90 players so far, but if you guys want to check who qualified from both regions, again, Fortnite Tracker always has them all there as well. It's just the top 100, and if you're confused why you're not seeing big names like Clicks, like Tayson, remember, they've already qualified into the grand finals that's next week. This is to find the top 10 spots to go into that grand final. So these are the top 100 players who haven't already qualified. Now, looking at the map, you'll notice some spots already super heavily contested. You do have Believers Beach, you have Holy Hedges, you have Lazy Lake, you have Caddy Corners. One thing all those spots have in common, same with Retail Road to an extent, Peppers. A lot of pros are really trying to play 2 Peppers. It's a solo meta. If you get your hands on a few Peppers, that gives you so much of an advantage when it comes to rotating. They're obviously major POIs as well, so they can fit quite a few players, but I don't really know if they're worth it that much. I saw a lot of really good players struggle or underperform even with the Peppers because honestly, launch pads are just as good right now. There is so much recyclable mobility around with the amount of launch pads. We don't just have launch pads back in the meta. We have launch pads back in the meta. Like, everyone has them. You've probably seen that if you've watched any of the games, if you've played pubs, arena, they are everywhere. Like, the launch pad spawn rate right now is ridiculous. If you're on opposite zone, you're just looking for pads. Almost no one is actually rotating without pads anymore, because if you don't have one, someone else does. So getting this heavily contested for Peppers, I don't fully agree with. I mean, some of these players would also just like these POIs, I get it, but when I'm looking at drops like Pleasant Park only have 2 players, and I'm looking at insane spots like Orchard only having 1, and half these henchman houses only having 1, I just can't see the value in quintuple dropping on Holy Hedges for a chance at a few Peppers. Maybe they know something I don't, but from what I've seen, honestly, the best drops on the map right now for the most consistent solo loot are the IO henchman houses. That's going to be my advice to you guys if you're looking for a new drop spot, you want to try it out. Obviously, Jerian's done Dropspot videos and all that. I'm not going to do like a detailed breakdown, but some of the most consistent drops on the map right now are those henchman houses. You've got to remember, almost everyone right now is running around with blue, green, or gray shotguns. The most consistent way to get your hands on a solid shotgun, which gives you a huge upgrade at the moment, is those IO houses. Yes, I know that Believers Beach has an NPC that sells them, but I truly think the best way to get your hands on it, especially in like a 6 to 10 game format, or if you're playing arena, is to drop at the IO guard houses. There's no more IO guards, there's no more music, there's no recon scanners, and there's no railguns in those henchman chests. And those henchman chests are 100% chest spawn. So if you drop on those ones, you get a massive chance to get a big shotgun, minis, big pods, good assault rifles. Honestly, that is the play. For example, the one, if you already know about it, and you can see 2 players clearly here know about it, Rihan and I think it's Mamadou or Mamadou, they're dropping on the one that's just to the south of Slurpee. There's a spot in there where where you can drop and there's 2 henchman chests guaranteed literally next to each other. Loot like that is going to be so invaluable in these tournaments. But we have quite a few big names landing by themselves as well. Like Coop's got a really good drop to himself. Eclipse has a really good drop to himself. I really like Quaz drop. Honestly, I feel like uncontested Orchard is absolutely massive right now. Remember, these are going to be Storm Surge lobbies. So as much as I like, you know, Nani getting Camp Cod to himself, it's going to be pretty rough rotating out of there. But right now, there's some really good drops on the map. Who do I think is going to do the best out of this lobby? It's really hard to know. It's going to depend on whether these drop spots change, whether people start to get contested. Honestly, you've got Coop, obviously solo FNCS DreamHack champion, really pops off in stack lobbies. Didn't do as well recently, but a lot of the solos we've seen haven't been stack lobbies, so have to kind of shout out my boy Coop there to see if he can back it up. The pressure's going to be on him for sure. Remember, we're missing a lot of our big solo players like Furious who aren't in this lobby because they're in the finals. It's going to go heavily to drop spot, but it's going to go heavily to just who's in the games. This is only 6 games. That's it. This isn't 12 games. It's 6 games of active Surge lobbies to make this count. I really don't know. And that's the next thing I wanted to talk about. You might not know a lot of these names. And obviously when you take out the top 90, you won't know as many of them. But I don't want that to be like a bad thing. I think that's one of the best things about solos. There's so many huge names who are popping off and playing so well. Dragon RG, for example, I hadn't really heard about this guy too much before this week. He has been popping off in every single round of these qualifiers. Absolutely dominating, and I'm super happy. I'm not going to try and watch the guy because he was streaming. I was watching him. I'm not going to try and say he didn't deserve it. This man is insane, and that's what solos is about. So before people start hitting the comments being like, who are these people? I have no idea who they are. They're all terrible. Who cares if they win? Trust me, I reckon at least one of the 10 people from tomorrow is going to do really, really well in the finals, because the amount of qualifiers they've gone through are such a good representation of the finals. These were active Storm Surge lobbies the whole time. The same goes for EU as well. I would actually hazard to say, similarly to the teams that auto-qualify into FNCS between seasons, they have missed out on a fair bit of practice. Players like Clicks, players like Booga, who didn't get to play in these qualifying games, they haven't got the experience all these guys have. These lobbies have been good, and the next thing is the servers have been good, like really good. There was a few games where I could see maybe a bit of edit delay. I could see the builds dropping a little bit slowly, but for all active Storm Surge lobbies, I have been seeing players, I mean, you probably saw this Eomzo clip. I'll just play it real quick. Just full boxing, piece controlling, and destroying people in endgame. The servers are looking good. So these players are going to have almost no excuses tomorrow when they don't perform, if they don't perform, because right now, you can't really blame the lag. It's not still 100% ideal. I'm not going to pretend that the game feels like creative, but compared to going back a few weeks ago, when active Storm Surge lobbies created people to literally just rubber band on the spot, like we're back in the skirmish days, dying in Storm like Cloaksy in 72 hours used to, it looks so much better. If you guys want to see how the finals break down, I'm going to be streaming NA East, EU, and NA West. Yes, I'm going live again at 3 a.m. my time, 3 days in a row, so I can follow EU because the games have just been too good. They'll all be live on my channel at twitch.tv/Aussie Antics. I'll be doing a replay mode viewing party, so flying around, seeing how everyone's going, following all the storylines. So if you want to swing by, say good day, I'd really, really appreciate it. All right, let's move on to this Thanos Cup and how you guys can win what will probably be one of the thickest skins in Fortnite. Like, I know this skin's going to become a bit of a meme, but it's honestly pretty clean, and who doesn't like free stuff? Especially when they're giving out a lot of them. If you haven't been able to win skin cups in the past, or maybe you struggle sometimes, I'm going to give you some tips and some advice on how to play this one, but also, there's a lot to go out. EU, 1st to 3,375th. And this is duos. So that means they are giving away almost 7,000 skins. You just have to be in the top 7,000 players, and it's not region locked. So if you want to give this a go on multiple regions, especially with this playstyle and this format that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, you could easily place on another region as well with a bit of luck. So this tournament is taking place on the 21st, which if you check your calendar is very, very soon. It's tomorrow for most of you guys. So it's going to be pretty much the first thing that's going to happen after this solo FNCS finishes up. The format, it is duos. It is 3 hours, 10 games, which is pretty standard, but 42 points for a victory royale, and each elimination is worth 1. Yes, it's duos, but you have to kill 42 players, half the lobby almost, to get the same points as a victory royale. This is actually gonna be semi-stacked. Like, I'm expecting on EU and some of the bigger regions to have pretty decent end games, especially towards the end of the tournament. Yes, the prize goes out super wide, but everyone likes just playing in a tournament and giving it a go. So if you get 8 points as well, you are going to get the cosmetic spray if that's like you care about. So give it a go. But land edge map, base up. Well, let me teach you exactly where to base up. Hide, get your free placement points. Obviously, if you're a good player, this advice isn't going to go to you so much. Get a good drop, get good weapons, play a bit aggressive in the early game, really try to alpha up a good drop. Okay, if you're a decent fighter and you want to do well in this tournament, figure out a decent drop that you like that has a better chance of getting a good shotgun. Whether that's Believer's Beach for the NPC upgrade, whether it's the IO houses like I already talked about. Drop somewhere a little bit more aggressive so you can get good loot, so you can then play out the end games. Because remember, this placement is worth everything. You start getting placements from the word go. So if you run out of games, let's say you run out of games with 20 minutes left, that is so many free points. It's insane. You get a point just for joining the game. So use up your games to their max, try to time your games well, but there is almost no reason to W key. You could have the best game of your life, literally a 40 bomb, and that's still only going to be worth as a victory royale with no elimination. So don't take stupid fights, don't risk it. But when you've got 10 games, 3 hours, find a good drop spot that gives you really good loot that you like, then play towards the end game. For those of you guys who aren't as confident, maybe you aren't feeling as good about this one, you don't like fighting as much, but you want yourself a free skin, hey, people are always going to hate on guys who box up and play for placement, but when a free skin's on the line, it's a free skin. For a lot of you guys, that's a big deal, so I respect it. But the advice I always give you in these tournaments, a lot of these people are going to get high amount of points early, and they're going to start keying, especially towards the end right before the lobbies close. So as even all the way through the tournament, but especially towards the end, do not base up early. Just because you are playing for placement doesn't mean everyone else is. You're going to run into some psychopaths. And I've said this before, the easiest way to find a free elimination or a fight that you know you're going to win is when you see a team boxed up at the center of second zone in wood. If you are going to box up, use very heavy hard mats, use metal, and build a decent amount of a base to play around. Secondly, though, try to avoid boxing up. Find bushes, find houses, sit in cones, just play the edges of the map and rotate in. Launch pads are everywhere. You don't need to be center zone. Coming in late and coming in on the edge of zone, whether you actually want to play in Storm for a little bit, will guarantee you so many placement points and such a consistent way of playing. Try to avoid basing up early. When it comes to end game, avoid high ground. Yes, you heard me. High ground is not the play in the current meta. Unless you're insanely good, and then if so, you already know this anyway, high ground right now is almost impossible to hold, especially against bad players, because everyone else wants high ground for whatever stupid reason. They suey it, they full send it on you, they crank 500 mats on high ground, you both end up going down, and you would have been way better off just playing your launch pads, playing the mid ground, and rotating. For example, on high ground right now, right, with launch pads in the game, as a duo, if you're really good, you can maybe hold it, but what's going to happen more often than not, you're going to tarp to front side to try and hold front side so no one builds up on you. Someone's going to launch pad on the back of your tarp, build over you. You're both going to die either sky battling, whatever you're doing, or dropping down, or you try to avoid that, so you sit at the back of your tarp to make sure no one lands on it, and then someone short pads the front side, 90s up, and then starts spraying at you. You see where I'm going? With this much launch pads in the game, high ground, if there's idiots in the lobby, they're gonna grief your game. It's not worth it. That's the best advice I'll give you when you're trying to play for placement in these lobbies. Stay low ground, stay mid ground, use your pads to rotate. If you can try to save your pad on half zone or first rotating, recycle someone else's, because everyone has them, and it's easy to recycle a pad on half because there's more room, it's a bigger area, and then you're padding with everyone else. Don't feel you need to use your pads straight away to rotate. If you're the first one to pad, unless you've done it well, there's a good chance you get beamed. Recycle someone else's, save yours for first rotating in case you get opposite first rotating. Do a nice little short pad, you're going to be sitting pretty. Those are my pieces of advice to place in this tournament. Alright guys, that does it for another video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please chuck a like on it. Let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts on anything I talked about today. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It would mean the world to me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.